So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our second panel of the day, looking at that all-important issue of the future of energy in the GCC. And you know, I suspect that that future is much more complex than we might at first imagine. Let me give you an example. The organizers of this event, CPI Trade Media, actually have a very successful division which looks at developments in the truck and fleet sector. So while, for instance, we might assume the future of transport is electric, that's not the assumption made necessarily in the truck and fleet sector, for example, where the development of hydrogen-based fuel cells is seen as perhaps more significant for heavy load haulage and long-distance transport than the development of electrical power. There are other examples as well. In this region, we are seeing the addition and development of nuclear energy as a completely sustainable bona fide addition to the alternative energy mix. That's very, very different, for instance, from the picture in Western Europe or in the United States, because just last month in Western Europe, in Germany, in Western Europe, they actually closed the last two remaining nuclear power stations connected to the national grid, and they've taken them off stream completely. They're no longer using nuclear. But in the rest of the world, nuclear is seen as an incredibly important potential way forward, and in this region included. What indeed will be the mix, the energy blend, that will determine the future of energy usage here in the GCC? Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what this next panel is going to assess on our behalf. So let me call up our valued panelists. Please come to the stage, Anton Shipalin, Nozomi Networks. Thank you so much. Thank you. David Haboubi, Atkins. Omnia Halawani, Griffin Project Development Consultants. Jesus Sancho, Acciona. Kirsten O'Connell, Allen and Overy LLP. And Riyad Bastani, EcoSquare. And indeed our moderator for what promises to be a very exciting panel indeed, Ahmed Al-Najjar, Alain Distribution Company. Please have a great panel session. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful event, a very important summit ahead of COP28, the preparations for COP28, as well as the continuing efforts for the United Arab Emirates in particular and all the other countries within the GCC region to step forward towards the future of energy. Now this panel, the topic of this panel is definitely one of the most exciting, one of the most interesting topics. We have a great panel, esteemed guests with varying areas of expertise to talk about different technologies, to talk about the future, how it's going to look like, as well as touch base upon what has been taking place in the past. Because if we're going to address the future of energy in GCC region, we cannot abandon the past and the history of this country and this region in terms of energy supply, meeting demand, and providing secure, safe, and reliable energy resources and sources and supply to the community. So, sustainability. Sustainability could be related to sustainable supply of energy resources, and it could also be related to sustainable demand. It's a very wide subject, and we hope that within the given time, we're going to touch base upon the supply side in terms of generation technologies, as well as demand, and what energy efficiency and sustainable urban development are contributing towards the future. We're going to look at what the government is looking after and currently working on in terms of their strategies, and we're going to talk about the role of the public and private sector companies in accelerating the efforts. It's not only about the UAE stepping forward for hosting COP28. It's not only about the UAE or the region making ambitious commitments towards the energy mix. It's about walking the talk, starting with projects, implementing and commissioning projects, and seeing the results. So we are going to have a quick look at how the future of the energy mix is going to look like. And again, I welcome my guests. First, we're going to talk about sustainability and its link to the history of this region. Now, before the exploitation and exploration of fossil fuels in this region, the sustainable practices were part of the cultural environment, were part of the community and communal practices here. If we have guests from within GCC countries, I'm sure if they ask any of their grandparents about how using, reusing, utilizing used equipment and has been part of the culture here. Now, with the rise of the new culture of consumption versus the culture of conservation, and of course, you know, with the globalization and the exploration of fossil fuels, which this region is rich of, people's cultural habits and behavior related to consumption have changed. And today we look into increasing demand, increasing forecast for energy requirements, in which the governments within GCC region have to react upon, plan, and forecast for the future. But at the same time, there are efforts as part of long-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies for each of the concerned countries towards securing supply, diversifying the mix of energy, as well as optimizing the demand and looking into ways to improve the demand on resources. So let me start this, and I'm gonna welcome the guests to, you know, we have some sort of an open discussion. If you have anything to say, I mean, we're gonna touch base upon specific topics, and please feel free to add any point you might see of value. In terms of sustainable supply, we can see that the country has clearly shifted over decades from being heavily dependent or almost completely dependent on fossil fuels for generating electricity and power towards more sustainable or environmentally friendly and green resources. So what type of resources are we talking about here in terms of the fuel mix? What do you think about that?
Do you want me to start? Do you want me to open then? Okay. The fuel mix, I mean, and I'm quite technology agnostic. Everyone thinks I'm just the nuclear guy, but actually I do cover other technologies as well. I think for this region, and nuclear will have a place. You know, there are certain countries which, you know, in this region where nuclear works, there are some that it just doesn't fit. And you know, no doubt it will provide abundant, you know, clean energy. And in the future, you know, there are advancing nuclear technologies, smaller reactors, high temperature reactors. I could talk for hours about that, but there is a huge amount of development going on, and there's a race to construct the first smaller scale nuclear reactors around the world at the moment. I think in the short term, let's be honest, gas will still play a role. You know, everyone says, oh, we can't have, no, absolutely. Combined cycle gas plants are still being built, and they absolutely will form part of the transition to net zero. They take 2 to 3 years to construct. They're unbelievably efficient. You can apply carbon capture to it. I'm not sure how much that's going to kick off here in the next few years, but you know, let's be honest, gas will be part of it. I think we all know PV solar and you know, has a place, but I think there's a limit to that. I think the key is around energy storage when you're introducing more renewables. Me personally, I don't think battery technology is going to solve your energy storage needs from a utility scale. I think there are alternative ways of energy storage. Hydrogen is one of them, because hydrogen can be burnt and it can be combusted, although I think we're still probably 4 or 5 years away till we have utility scale hydrogen engines. And things like pump storage, you know, which I know that the Hatta plant in Dubai is building. You have to be fortunate enough to have mountains and the right type of rock to have that type of facility. But what a great addition to the mix for energy storage. That's my thoughts on.
Well, these are great points. But if you could shed light a little bit about the future of adopting nuclear energy in this region. I mean, Abu Dhabi has taken further steps, and they've commissioned several plants so far. I'm not sure if they have commissioned all of them, or there are still other phases yet to be commissioned. Do you foresee other countries within GCC region to step towards the same?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the UAE has got 3 out of its 4 reactors running. Then Unit 4 will come online end of this year, early next year. There are plans to build future reactors in the UAE, and I think they've already announced that now. But they've said that the current Baraka plant only constitutes 20% of what the country is going to do in terms of nuclear power. So this is over the next 30, 40 years, because it does take this long to build that scale of plants. So the UAE will develop more, and it might not necessarily be the same technology. They will diversify their technology. Saudi Arabia will be the next GCC country to embark on nuclear. They're currently assessing their technology options now for nuclear, but I think it'll be around early to mid 2030s when those plants will become online. As far as I know, they're the only GCC countries that will be looking at nuclear.
Mm-hmm. Well, the great thing is that we see the governments are determined, you know, towards the steps, even if it's going to take longer time. However, they're taking solid and serious steps towards the development. In terms of green hydrogen, the last question before I move on to other panelists. In terms of green hydrogen, how would you see that? Especially that we have heard that Saudi Arabia is planning to build one of the largest green hydrogen production plants.
Yeah, I think Oman, Saudi, and the UAE have all got very big plans in place. Some of the green hydrogen isn't purely for energy. Some of it's for export into derivatives such as ammonia or methanol, because hydrogen is very difficult to transport. But I said I do see hydrogen in the future as a potential energy source as well. I said it can be combusted. Everyone knows hydrogen is pretty flammable, but the technology is not quite there to have utility scale hydrogen turbines right now. I think we're probably 5 years away from things coming to market. But right now we're helping gas plants introduce 5, 10, 15% hydrogen blends into the gas to reduce their reliance on gas and increase that blend of hydrogen. So steps are happening now to introduce hydrogen to the generation mix right now.
Great plans. Thanks, David. Now, Omnia, in terms of renewable resources, and here we might we might need to classify between renewables in terms of utility scale developments, or those that are designed and built for small applications, SME, or small homes. Where do you see that development going on? And if you could shed some light on what the regulators, energy regulators, are trying to do in that regards.
All right. Thanks, Ahmed. So we definitely see a lot of solar specifically that is being commissioned countrywide and region-wide, whether on a utility scale or distributed on a private scale. A lot of interesting business models have also emerged. So similar to the energy retrofits or ESCO model, there is as well a renewable model that is financed by the providers and installed for private developers in an EPC contract model, so that also accelerates. But if I take a step back on any energy generation technology, basically to be widespread and to increase the penetration into the market, you normally, in addition to what David said, so technology maturity and energy storage, those are two important factors that we need to look at. But there is also the regulatory part, as you said. How will they regulate? Are there policies in place? Is the grid smart? And taking another step backward as well, looking at the technology itself, a lot of factors come into place. So the efficiency of producing energy out of that source, scalability, availability, and of course the environmental impact as well as safety common factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in terms of now here you're talking specifically about renewables or solar energy in particular. What do you think about other renewable resources such as wind energy? Do you think there is a opportunity or a feasibility, given the context of climate change and how recently the GCC region have seen added climate conditions? Do you see that there might be a chance to explore or invest or at least pilot such investments?
Okay, so solar is an easy answer, right? We have an abundance of sun here. There's a lot of factors that need to be taken care of. If we look at other resources, wind, it would definitely depend on the location. There is some movement on wind generation in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt and in other regions, not as much in the UAE, I believe. We've seen as well some geotechnical resources being used. And I'm not an expert on nuclear and hydrogen, so I'll leave that to my colleagues, but this is where I can vouch for, basically.
Yeah. Now, thanks, Omnia. Now, Riyadh, in terms of waste to energy projects, we know, I mean, these are most of the technologies we're talking about. I mean, these are old technologies. However, for the region, they are relatively new. Being one of the experts, and masterminds behind several waste-to-energy projects, what could you tell us in that regards about what governments have taken in that area so far?
Okay, thanks, Ahmed, for the question. And as you mentioned, it's not something that people know about. Waste-to-energy is quite very new for the region. If I just maybe ask a question to the audience or even the panelists, how many waste-to-energy plants we have in the world compared to other plants, let's say nuclear, for instance. I've been Googling last night and checking. I was like surprised by the numbers. So if you have a hint. So it's basically 2,600 waste-to-energy plants around the world, and you have probably like 450 nuclear power plants. So it gives you the size of this technology, which has been there for years. Started probably around the 70s. So it's something that has been there, especially in Western type of country, and there's some reasons behind, and also why it's coming up here. Obviously, the energy mix is something that the governments are working on and trying to diversify. As David was saying, solar is a good, but it's not going to be sufficient for covering the needs. Population is growing. A lot of waste is also produced. I mean, we're like one of the regions where you have the highest amount of waste per capita around the world. So basically, it hits two birds with one stone. It's basically tries to solve the issue of, reducing the waste going to the landfill, which also emits CO2 and methane emissions. And at the same time, it allows to produce in a sustainable way because, unfortunately, we're growing and we're going to be buying and throwing things in the coming years. It's not going to stop. We're probably going to start, building new habits and changes. But I think waste will still be there. It's going to be a source, reliable source, let's say, of energy. And this is happening in the region because also in the past few years, I've been living in the region for 20 years, more or less. And we've seen since, let's say, 2017-18, a kind of awareness coming from the government side around waste. And it initiated somehow also the issue of, what can we do instead of just, treating or managing the landfills is also using that source of energy to build power plants. And we have in Dubai a greatest example, which is the biggest waste-to-energy plant ever built. It's like 1.9 million tons of waste, which will come soon into operation. Sharjah has already initiated their own with BR, and it's already running. They've been publishing, I think, lately some figures about how much waste they have reduced, I think around 150 tons per year, producing energy, which is covering the needs for some communities in Sharjah. So it's picking up. I think there is a good awareness of there is a possibility to do something else of waste and than just managing the landfills. And it's a technology which, again, as I said, is proven. So it's accessible. There are some drawbacks, which is a big investment, obviously. So financing, we talked about that in the previous panels, is going to be a topic that needs to be involved so that we can, produce more projects on that. And Saudi is also working on some projects for waste to energy. So there's a lot of attention on something which has not been so well known in the region. And I see it growing because it's also, as I said, solving two issues. The waste and the production of energy will still be there for you.
Exactly. I mean, when looking at, when evaluating, the benefits for investing in waste-to-energy projects, I could see that it's a win-win for everyone. And allow me to say, but I mean, the numbers are really humble when it comes to their market share among the energy mix. So what are the challenges do you see?
Okay.
I mean, is it from the regulatory investment side, or is it from the, from the demand side?
Well, there are different aspects to look at it. One is the financing of it, which is like big capex. I mean, it's huge in terms of in operation and maintenance also. It needs a lot of technology, because you have a lot of production of flue gases and bottom ash that you need to treat. So there's also, treatment operation that you need to handle. It is something that in Europe, for instance, you can build within cities, but then that's a change of mindset for people. You know, having an incinerator within a city is something that people are not used to it. And you've probably seen the Copenhagen famous, you know, plant, which people can ski on top of it. So it's something that is becoming easy there, but less in the region. So there's also a kind of a mindset changing for communities. And one of the other point is the waste to energy can make sense in terms of profitability if you have two elements, which is the gate fee for the waste and the energy production that you will sell on the grid. The gate fee has been recently modified. I mean, I've been working in a cement factory before, and we were collecting waste, and the cost of waste is so low that it doesn't give you any incentive to take it. It used to be like 10 dirhams a truck. Now it's roughly 100 dirhams per ton. So it makes the, let's say, attractiveness of waste, make it in the equation for the project more profitable. So that's one side which, I mean, we are still far from the 100 or 200 euros a ton in Europe, you know, and people have to buy their own bags, which they have to pay and so on. So there's a lot of steps to go, but it's moving on, and at the speed which I see very fast, although people think it's very slow, but when we think about what happened in Europe, it took 20 to 30 years to reach where we are. So let's give them a little bit more time here. And the other side is obviously, as I said, the cost of electricity, which you have to sell. Yeah. And we know here it's subsidized. So you have to make the equation between those two elements so we can maybe implement more projects.
Thanks, Riyad. I think, Jesus, you would like to add something?
Yes, thank you. I do agree with Riyad, my good friend Riyad, of course, that waste to energy is good in general. But there is waste to energy and waste to energy. What do I mean by that? You ask, what are the challenges? I'll give you challenges. 2,600 waste to energies in the world at this moment. How many are taxonomic? That is a challenge. I'll explain that. Who in the audience knows what a taxonomic project is? Not many. The European Union has put like a roadmap or a book, which is called the taxonomy. Those projects which are aligned with the 17 Sustainability Development Goals of the United Nations are taxonomic. For example, in energy production, you have to generate a kilowatt hour with less than 300 grams of CO2 emissions. If you don't do that, you're not, that project or that company is not a or that country is not a taxonomic country. So when you are recharging your Tesla, you're emitting more than 300 grams of CO2 per every kilowatt hour. So when you think about the waste to energy, you have to think there's basically three mistakes people make. One, if the incinerator is all in, because everybody knows that a landfill is, nobody wants a huge amount of garbage next to your city, right? Smells, bacteria growth, contamination of the aquifers, everything is bad. However, if you put a waste to energy as big as it can go, 2 million tons per year, and you're all in, means recyclable garbage, non-recyclable garbage, everything goes into the oven and generates CO2. You're diverting garbage from the landfill, but you're not being taxonomic. Second mistake, the garbage segregation. If a government is not putting education and efforts on the people to segregate at home, then at least you have to have an MRF, material recovery facility, before the oven, before the incinerator, to segregate. And if you have non-recyclable garbage, go to the oven. Recyclable garbage, paper, glass, you have to recycle. That's the taxonomic way. And if you put some carbon capture sequestration, which those 2,600 and the big ones don't, you are not being taxonomic. You're just burning garbage. And there are other mistakes. I mean, you have to, I mean, I agree with Riyad. Everybody knows Copenhagen in Denmark. The palace of the king is less than 2 kilometers away, and there's no smell. It's an amazing example. At Acciona, we started with sustainability. Honestly, our president, more than 20, 25 years ahead of the pack. We are a carbon neutral company since 2016. We have 45,000 employees in more than 50 countries in the world. Not very large, but we are $14 billion company. We're in the Spanish Stock Exchange as part of the IBEX 35. And we are doing actions. I mean, we, as a director and each top manager in Acciona, 12.5% of this annual bonus is whatever achievements you do towards sustainability. That's when the people start thinking, well, this project, that project, what can I do different? So we have seen that our company will say business as unusual, as a company. And wherever we go, we are now building big desalination plants in the region. Just in the GCC, we have more than $3 billion worth of projects of seawater desalination by reverse osmosis, but we are adding something else. In Jubail 3B, we're putting 61 megawatts of photovoltaic on the plant. Just 5 years ago, 60 megawatts of solar was a big plant. Nowadays, it's very tiny because we have gigawatts. But we're doing whatever we can. In the metro line of, Line 6 metro line of Rio de Janeiro, we put an area for two, because ESG is also part of the taxonomy. So we put 2 or 3 metro stations that women and children could not access because it's extremely dangerous, especially at night. So we put a system with flooding light, with vigilantes from the people themselves. And now women and children can use it. So you have to do something different. This part of the world has signed the net zero commitment. Not totally as Europe, but at least they have the policy in place and signed. Some of them signed for 2050. Some of them signed for 2060. Only one country in the GCC has not signed. But at least they're trying to do 25% decarbonization on their energy. But the point is that you have to do things in a different way. There is, unfortunately, we don't have like a higher authority in the world that can really look at the COP28. COP28, it started in 1995 in Berlin. And then we have the Kyoto Agreement, then we have the Paris Agreement, 2015. And the previous panel, I mean, you always hear the same thing. We hope to materialize, consolidate. When is that going to stop? You have to do something really in your companies, every person, themselves.
Thanks, Jesus. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
I totally agree with you, and I'm gonna come back to you. I mean, I guess you have a lot of insights when it comes to the demand side and the people side and the awareness and what needs to be done in addition to the regulatory framework. Now, which drives me to ask Kirsten here about, now we've been talking about several technologies. We talked about nuclear, we talked about renewables, and we've talked about waste to energy. So let me ask you about what you foresee in terms of the challenges that needs to be addressed when it comes to the regulatory framework, contractual agreements, from your perspective, from your view and line of business.
Thanks so much, Ahmed. It is very exciting times. There are commitments, as we've heard and we've been talking about today, and that does require changes. And with change comes opportunity, but also comes challenges. And so as you've mentioned, there will be challenges from the regulatory arena, particularly where we're talking about new products, new definitions, and new requirements. And a key in all of that, it just simply has to be clarity where possible. One of the big questions I think that's going to be coming up and that a lot of people in this room will be facing is, what does green actually mean? So when we're talking about the energy transition and looking at green hydrogen or green products, how are the different governments actually defining this in terms of taxonomy? What is the definition? And if you're looking to export your products, where are you going to be sending them to? Because right now we don't have uniformity around that. It's a term that is being used very, very frequently, but not one that is necessarily being used consistently or with a lot of clarity. And I think that is going to be a real source of challenge for people operating in this area. Mm-hmm. And then the other potential source of challenges will be, of course, with your commercial and contractual relationships. So we, particularly within the energy space, there have been a lot of preset and a lot of history in terms of negotiations, in terms of the standard forms that are being used, in terms of your risk allocation. But when we're talking about new forms of energy and new technologies, we are also talking about potentially new risks. And the big question that a lot of people in this room are asking is the previously established risk allocation method the right one for our new products? And what you really want to be considering is who is best placed to bear that risk? And are the forms that I'm using for my engagement now for this new project, is that the right one? Do they need to be investigated? And do we know enough in terms of what the potential risks may be? So, there are examples with some of the, waste energy projects where you have risks that, we've seen time and time again. So there are lots of recent cases in terms of where you get your traditional risks and your traditional claims, but where you're dealing with new technologies and also parties that are starting to enter into this area for the first time, then that's where your risks are going to be heightened. And making sure that you prioritize risk management in a proactive manner is going to be absolutely crucial.
Risks. Yeah, thanks a lot, Christine. Now I'm going to talk about different type of risks arising recently within the region related to cyber attacks. And we're very glad to have one of the experts to tell us about that. Anton, cyber attacks, shutting down plants, disturbing the network, the control and SCADA systems. What could you tell us about that?
Thank you, Ahmed, and I'm happy to be here. I'm a little bit from a different universe. I'm from cybersecurity industry, and it's interesting to hear all your voices and deliver my message, because we are talking today about future of energy. Energy is one of the national critical infrastructures in all the countries in the world, and as we talk today about future, we're talking about technology. This technology in future and now they're based on the digital. Digital is everywhere. Everywhere we see smart devices. Everywhere we see connectivity with the partners, with clouds, with external system, and so on. But we have to be careful with the technology because with all the great opportunities and benefits, there are risks. And cybersecurity risk, cyber risk, they're not the number one risk for energy industry. Of course, I understand there are economical risks, there are natural disasters and so on, but they are very significant because digital is everywhere. On digital, the disruption, the problems with digital can disrupt the supply chain to the to the clients, to the consumers. So this is why the cyber risks should be part of the enterprise level risk management program these days. So it's not only, these days it's not the topic of like technology specialists, just geeks. This is the problem of executive. There should be executive in every company, every energy company should be executive who is responsible for the cybersecurity. And talking about the risk itself, what can be done? The cyber risk may cause the downtimes with big financial consequences. It can disrupt disrupt equipment. It can, even cause the catastrophic ecological consequences. And we saw that it's not theoretical. We saw that in real life. We saw that incident. We saw the downtimes that cost millions of dollars. Like, for example, with ransomware attacks, with Colonial Pipeline, with other energy companies and from other industries.
Some of those might be devastating for the environment and the population as well. Like if we talk about nuclear energy, for example, and cyber attacks impacting the reactors.
Exactly, but it's a good chance to talk now because we're talking about future, and unfortunately these days cybersecurity is too late to the party. When it's usually it's important and people ask for cybersecurity when something bad happened. But when we start thinking about future, it's better to think about risk at the beginning. And at the beginning, it's a big part of risk management, the global risk management program. And in cybersecurity, there is always lack of visibility, risk visibility, vulnerabilities visibility, the threat visibility. This is one of the key points here. Focus on continuous visibility of cyber risk, the problems you have. There are lots of cyber threat actors these days. It's criminal, it's nation states, and so on. But you cannot chase all of them every time. You need to concentrate, you need to focus on what you have, what your problem, what your vulnerabilities. So this is my message. Try to manage, identify risk as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Anton, Riyad, David, Omnia, Jesus, and Kirstine for your insights. We've had a big focus on challenges and risks, although our aim here is to open the eyes of everyone on what we need to work on, hand in hand, private and public with the government. I think we might be having time for questions now, or do we still have a minute?
So I think let's launch into some questions, because I think what you've been discussing is so rich and sort of very nourishing in terms of content. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. So let's launch into some questions. If that's okay with yourself, let's lead some questions now.
Sure.
Yeah? So ladies and gentlemen, please, any questions on what I think is a very interesting session, just here, please.
Hi there, my name is Alexa Hall from Clyde & Co. My question is for Jesus. As a major contractor in this space, what challenges from a risk allocation perspective are you seeing during the delivery of these sorts of projects?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, liquidity, I mean, we are not we're developers as well, contractors and operation and maintenance contractors of sustainable infrastructure. So challenges, liquidity is not an issue. The lenders are there. Finding green financing may be a challenge. We're company, we have 3 PPPs in Saudi Arabia at the moment, Medina, Buraida, and Tabuk, which we did the first green financing for sewage treatment plants on a concession-based, and that was a great achievement. That may be a challenge. To try to make some customers understand that you have to do things in a different way, it is a challenge. We are experts in reverse osmosis, for example, desalination, and we are not participating on a huge project somewhere in this region because the potable water was to be injected in the oil wells just to get more fossil fuels. In Acciona, it's no. We have seen some light bulb changes coming from the original light bulbs to LED to reduce CO2 emissions on the street lightings. We're not participating because there is no generation. Each street light, we went to the client, say, just put some panels and batteries in each of the street lights. You have 14,000, and you can generate something and have 2, 3, 4 hours at night for free. The answer was no, it's too late. We're just replacing the light bulbs. That's good, to have LED is good, but it's not enough. When you have, there are other examples that we cannot participate, a waste to energy plant, because there's no MRF, because there's no, it's all in this part of the world, cannot participate. So for me, sometimes it's frustrating, and that we cannot participate in the projects we are experts in, because they are not having this extra thing, and that's a challenge. And then finding good EPC contractors is becoming more and more of a challenge. Some of the big names in the industry has done away with being EPC. EPC is very hard. We are still EPC, mostly for our own projects, but also for other third parties. You have seen the number of EPC contractors for industrial projects, energy projects, have been out of business in the last 5 years, a huge number of them, because the contractual terms and conditions are getting harder and harder. So I'm competing with state-owned companies from China or other places. So those are the challenges we're facing, but the clients, in the positive note, the clients in this part of the world are more and more receptive to sustainable projects and practices.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you.
Any other questions at all, please?
Hello.
Gentleman just here. Sorry.
Sorry, I have a question.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
May I kindly ask our panelist guests to try to be as concise as possible in terms of your answers, because I can see there are a lot of questions and interest, to ask you.
Hi, my name is Maria, and I work in construction. I'm actually a lighting designer. And one of the things that we see a lot is there's great interest in sustainability from the beginning of projects, but when clients see the cost of investing in sustainability or the first cost that they have to do, then they take a step back and then usually don't do it, or they want to half do it. So how can we express to them what is the return on investment of going into sustainability right off the bat, instead of doing it sometime later or thinking about it differently?
Thank you very much. And I guess you're talking about built environment developments,
Yes.
not infrastructure?
Correct.
Yeah, all right. I guess
And
that
infrastructure
question...
as well, by the way.
Sorry?
Infrastructure as well, just following what Jesus
Okay.
said, for example, the change of the light bulbs is an excellent example, right? Instead of doing it all the way,
Yeah.
they're doing it halfway. So how can we express what is the return on investment for
Thank
the
you very
client?
much.
I think I can take that.
I believe we didn't give the right, time slot to talk about the demand side and energy efficiency side, although we have a lot to talk about, when it comes to future of energy, especially that it's being recognized by the United States that energy efficiency will account for around 30% of the energy mix within 2030. Energy efficiency, the avoided energy as a power producer. Can you imagine this idea? Avoided energy as a power producer. So I guess Omnia could answer this question, being a co-founder for one of the leading project development consultancy companies.
Thanks.
What can you tell us about this, Omnia?
So when we're talking about replacement of lighting, that falls under building retrofits. And I think there's a lot of traction within the market, actually, and a lot of interest towards the ESCO model, which is the energy services companies. And that is also being fueled by a lot of governmental support, whether from Ittihad ESCO or from TAQA, or the likes of the utility companies as well. And maybe lighting on its own sometimes proves difficult, given the percentage of energy use when it comes to lighting versus HVAC. So packaging energy retrofits as a whole building retrofit normally comes as more attractive to developers or private sectors. Not to say that lighting retrofits do not happen. We are currently working with various entities on lighting retrofits, whether in Dubai airports or in DEWA plants as well. That involves buildings as well as street lighting retrofits. And I think maybe a commentary on what Jesus said earlier about the replacement of LEDs on streetlights. What we actually advise clients is to actually go with the replacement before the addition of any renewables, for the simple fact that you will be offsetting a lower energy use rather than offsetting the non-efficient use of energy. So an answer to the question would be maybe packaging it within other service providers that can supplement or complement your services with lighting replacements to a whole building retrofit, as well as approaching the likes of Etihad ESCO and TAQA and ADUS with your solutions as well. They can definitely facilitate financing for that.
Thanks, Omnia.
Thank you.